it's time to sit back and relax with your favorite drink. And listen. Well, my dear friends, it feels like forever and a day since we last had fun round the campfire. So, why don't you all draw in a little bit closer? Because I've got a couple of stories to tell you. And they go something like this. Freshly killed. The smell of something metallic and sour tickled my nose. The trees towered over me, their low-hanging branches reaching down like thousands of gnarled, bark-covered hands. Each scratched my body as I passed them. I coughed loudly. A chilling wind flooded through the forest. I shivered and watched over the horizon as the sun began to set. The sky was marmalade orange, and it brought back memories of wandering the wilds and watching sunsets with my best friends. Using the sling, I threw my rifle onto my shoulder and then held it by the strap, sighing. The breath froze in a small, swirling cloud, then faded as it dissipated back into the atmosphere. My foxhound, Levi, dashed to my side, growling under his breath. I turned to him and looked down, and then pet him behind the ears. He didn't seem to settle any. My friend Clay was taking steps closer to us. A single leaf swirled from a tree above and landed on the ground. It was reddish-brown, covered in black and grey splotches. "You smell that, Luke?" asked Clay. I inhaled again, and the tangy scent filled my nostrils. It was a thin smell, yet sickly sweet. There was an underlying taste of something red. "Smells kind of like iron," I shrugged. "Bear probably caught a deer or something, wouldn't you think?" Clay chuckled a little, raising his shoulders as if to stretch them out. "If there's a bear out in these woods, we'll leave it with a few bullet holes." I smirked. "We'll see about that, Clay." I took a moment to scan the clearing. Nothing but open, beautiful sky, painted like Bob Ross himself had done it. A wall of faint violet was brushed just beneath the orange cream soda horizon. The setting sun was a red medallion floating in the air, with yellowish clouds drifting in front of it. The trees were still mostly green, with patches of red, brown, and yellow, and orange dotting their leaves. The bark was shifting from brown to white as the forest went into its deep winter sleep. As the cold, arid air flooded my nose like mint, the taste of blood came again. I felt a shiver rack my body. I held my breath and turned, looking down a small trail. There were 2 trees on each side of the gravel path, almost in the shape of an arch of sorts, like it was put there for us to walk under. Levi, taking careful steps, started towards the path. Clay and I followed. The sky steadily lost its color, becoming a deeper purple. Stars began to show through, bleeding into the backdrop with the passage of time. I felt my heart pounding in my ribs whenever Levi paused. "Say, where have all the animals been?" Clay asked. I shrugged, gesturing with one hand. "Haven't even been hearing them. Pretty damn weird." Clay chuckled a little. We walked for another 10 minutes, and Levi got lower to the ground, arching his back as if he were going to sprint out, off the path and into the woods. I slung my rifle back into my hands and got down on one knee, resting my cheek as I looked down the scope. Clay stood just a few feet behind, stepping in circles and scanning the area. A long minute dragged on, and nothing but the sound of blowing wind and leaves tumbling across the forest floor. There wasn't the usual ambient noise of bugs chirping or frogs croaking. "It's getting dark. We're going to have to leave soon," I said. There was a force pressuring me to stay, almost like a voice inside my head that wasn't speaking. Clay gave me a solemn stare. "You don't feel like leaving either, do you?" Clay asked. I smirked and shook my head. "Might be illegal. It's whatever. We won't shoot anything then." "Probably still illegal." "The law can kiss my ass, quite frankly," I said. You know it. Hey, I brought a flashlight, Clay stated. I chortled. You were planning all this, weren't you? I asked. Clay grinned and scratched his chin. It's been a long time since we've been in this neck of the woods. And he was right. He and I had always ventured about in our youth, along with our other friends. Clay and I, despite having kept in touch, hadn't gone hunting or exploring since our days as high schoolers. That night, when we went out, it was the first time we'd gone hunting in, forever. Levi strolled cautiously as we journeyed deeper into the forest. The trail we were on got thinner, about the width of a sidewalk in a neighborhood. The path started to feel familiar. There were tree branches whacking me in the face as we traveled. Clay's flashlight left us with nothing but a beam of white light to lead the way. Silver crescents dotted the ground, shapes slipping through the canopy of leaves above as the moon began to float into the sky, the night reigning king now. I sniffed, and still caught a whiff of iron. Hey, remember that bear? I asked Clay. He nodded his head. Levi contained a roar. Definitely killed more than one animal. It's been on a hunting spree. We'll see about that. Clay squinted, biting down on his lower lip. We continued to walk. Light transitioned into dark as night fell upon us. As we walked the trail, thoughts stirred in my mind. As the memory poured back into my brain, everything leveled out, and it was as if the forest changed around me. It had been a cool yet bright day. Soft April winds blew through the woods. I walked in the same spot beside my father, who carried a hunting rifle with him. He'd never let me touch it. Well, our foxhound Josie paraded along with us, pridefully bounding forward. That was the day my father had taught me how to hunt, and it was also the day I shot my first deer. A warm yet bitter taste found itself at the back of my throat, and I coughed. I just realized where we are, I said to Clay. The trail returned to its normal state of nighttime, and the feeling of wonder and discovery started to numb down. With a coy smile, he shook his head. What the hell are you talking about, Luke? This is the exact same trail where I shot my first deer, where my dad taught me how to hunt, I explained. And the feeling returned. This is the exact same spot where I made that shot, I uttered. Clay smiled at first, and then frowned, freezing in place. When I next breathed in, there was the tang of blood and the certainty of death. That's cool, he murmured. I stammered at first. Clay, it's okay, I replied, getting control of my tongue. Sorry. I know it's been hard for you. The past is in the past, I said. He nodded his head. Then came the next memory. I was in the passenger seat just a little under a year ago when my dad was driving. We were out on a country road, in the dark, blaring Johnny Cash on the car's radio. I was banging my head and clapping my hands when my father's gasp and the screeching of tires drew my attention away. We rolled over, and his side of the car was crushed by a cluster of trees. He'd lost control and was going far too fast. That was all it took. In the blink of an eye, the scrapbook of life's memories was closed. Clay took another whiff of the air. I listened to the howling of the wind. It sounded strained, eerie, and agonized, like God was warning me to stay out of the woods that night. And then a wall of smells hit me. Something faintly decayed, and the stench of the blood became 1,000 times stronger. I coughed, narrowing my eyes and trying to peer into the darkness. "The hell is that?" Clay questioned. I pursed my lips, keeping my rifle pointed. Levi barked once, a stern, commanding call. You'd better not get in my way. Something like a broken man protecting his family as they cowered behind him. Clay retched, kept composure, and then turned the flashlight up to a brighter setting. It allowed us to see a few feet further. We took calculated steps forward. Levi stayed behind, hackles raised, teeth bared. He snarled like a predator might leap from the bushes at any minute. A small swarm of flies rushed past me, humming and buzzing. They became zooming black specks in the light before disappearing into the shadows. I turned to Clay, frowned, and then looked ahead. This isn't normal, I thought. Could have been a family of bears on a hunting trip, or something else. Yeah, like what? Foxes collecting their dead rabbits like trophies. Well, like you said, this isn't normal, Clay reminded me. I nodded my head slowly. Now I'm interested. Clay stared off to the side, then back at me. I think I am too. Let's keep going. We walked for another 10 minutes or so, Levi trailing behind us now, taking each step like it was a leap forward into the mouth of death itself. The forest didn't feel so welcoming anymore. The path was now thin enough that Clay had to lead the way while Levi and I followed behind him, as baby ducklings would with their mother. An owl hooted, just before I heard it fluttering away. Stars glimmered through the gaps in the leaves. I gazed at the concealed, yet open sky, and was brought back to that night in the car. Only this time, in my head, I turned to look at my father. His skin was decomposed, his eyes and teeth missing, leaving gaping black holes in its place. Leaves and mud were stuck to his rotten flesh. He grinned without teeth, just as a worm wriggled its way out of his eye. And then, with decomposed hands, he jerked the steering wheel to the left, purposefully. I snapped from the vision, only to feel my head throbbing and heart pounding. I noticed I was taking heavier, slower breaths. Clay stopped and turned his head to face me again. You okay? I nodded. Yeah, sorry, I was just thinking about my dad. You don't have to be sorry. Yeah. Clay made a blank face, turned and continued. Silence took over again. We stepped through a patch of pale moonlight as the path ended, reduced to nothing but dry, dying grass and tree roots. There were a few pines in the mix of oaks and birches. I ducked underneath one of the tree's 1,000 different arms, watching them dance and sway with the groaning wind. The smell wasn't as strong now. It seemed that earlier the wind had carried it over to us. But nevertheless, the taste of blood was in the back of my throat, and the odor was now more present than it had been when Clay and I first smelled it. Getting stronger? Almost to the fox's den, huh? I asked. Clay chuckled. I realized he was cradling his gun now, holding it close to his chest as if it were a holy weapon to him, or a child. We'll have to see, he thought. The crackling sound of leaves in the distance could have been mistaken for footsteps, but it was quiet enough to leave the noise up to interpretation. Clay shot me a quick glance still. I felt a dark emotion, almost like a rotted hand was gripping my heart. An oily, black wave slicked through my body and corrupted it. I took in another deep breath. The tingling at the back of my throat remained, sour and yet viciously sweet, in some horrid, feral kind of way. For a second, I felt like an animal myself. I glanced at my rifle and saw myself as the bear now, and as long as I looked away and tasted the blood again, I was the deer. We walked a while longer, and Levi froze once more. I spun around to face him. "Come on, boy," I uttered. He growled. When I turned, Clay had taken a few steps forward, eyes round and jaw dropped nearly to the ground. I narrowed my eyes and peered at the trees ahead. I began to count before losing track. 20, 30, 40, 50 or more trees were raked with claw marks. Splinters of chewed bark littered the ground. The scratches were deep enough and large enough that you might be able to fit a hand in there, a young child could. The smell was right on top of us now, and as the wind blew in our direction, it carried it forward. I coughed, nearly gagging up my dinner as I did. The vile taste of puke burned at the edge of my mouth. I caught up to Clay, who was standing still, trembling. I could only tell that because the flashlight beam kept moving by an inch or two. He exhaled a cloud of frosty breath, and I shivered. "We have to find out what it is," I said. Clay took his phone from his pocket and clicked a few pictures. He got a couple of close-ups as we passed through the damaged part of the wood. The tainted scent had only grown stronger. I looked back to find Levi had not moved. "Come on, Levi. Come here, boy," I hollered quietly, and then whistled. It echoed through the night. And Levi's response was a whimper. "Hey, buddy," I repeated. "What's that?" Clay asked. He was about 10 feet ahead of me. He continued to walk and then stopped. He made the same expression that he had when we'd seen the claw marks, only this time it was exaggerated. I jogged towards him, and Levi made a choked, horrified noise as I left him behind. I was standing in front of Clay now, looking at what the flashlight beam was pointing at. A drop of blood dripped from the tree's canopy, and then I looked up. Hanging from the branch, tied by what remained of its fur coat, was an animal, mostly skeletonized, nothing left behind other than a few chunks of muscle on the bony frame. My heart stopped. Looking past that, there were more shapes hanging from the trees, possibly 100 or so. The wind blew, and the smell overwhelmed me. I held the vomit back, feeling like it might erupt from my jaws. Freshly killed, I thought. Then came the sound of what I thought to be stirring leaves, but I wasn't so sure anymore. November 17th, 1999. I have to write this now. I don't know why I have the urge to write it all down, either. I think it's the other half of me trying to bide itself more time. That's why I should keep this brief. Every word's an inch closer to... Shit, I can't put it on paper just yet. My name is Thomas Bruno. I found something in my basement the other day that opened some doors that really should have stayed shut. Ever since I found it, my skin has been rippling and chills have coursed through me. My organs don't feel like my own. The dog is off its leash now, but I don't know if I'm the dog or if I'm the man walking it. I moved out of my parents' house a while ago. After high school, I decided to stay with them for another 2 years, just to get on my feet. I used to laugh about our differences. My mum and dad are unshakenly Catholic, while I'm borderline atheist. I was surprised they even let me stay with them for 2 more years, considering my history with parties, women, weed, and the latter of which I cut back on to get into better shape for football. While my hair is dark, my eyes are brown, while their hair's blonde. My father has green eyes, while my mother has blue. I bought a house after the 4th time my parents had come into my room and caught me with another girl. Well, my father came into the room later that night and told me the next time I was caught like that, I had 6 months to pack everything up and leave. I told him I'd get out of his hair earlier than that. I had all the money previously saved up, and I managed to get myself a small house, built back in '74, painted grey with 2 stories, counting the basement, and almost 0 square feet. During the moving process, I found a small VH tape packed inside of a cardboard box. I blew a cloud of dust off the tape, realizing there was a sticky note stuck to the VHS. I read it, and in faded letters, written out in red pen, I could see that it said, birth. Well, I stuck my tongue in between my lips, staring at the chicken scratch letters. I put the tape away like I was lowering a slab of meat into a pen of alligators, drawing my arm back with haste once it was in the box. I fixed myself some dinner, just a plate of bleeding steak. And then, well, I tossed and turned that night, thinking about the house payments and my own paycheck from work. Oh, it was frigid in my room, and goosebumps coated my arms and body. I remembered the tape, thought about it for a second, then threw it into the back of my mind. I thought back to that fourth time of getting caught, my bedroom door opening and the "oh shit" look on my girl's face, and the blank expressions that were on my parents. I remember my mum throwing a condom wrapper into the trash, raising an eyebrow at me and saying, "I hope these are all women that disrespect you just as much as you do them, Thomas. And I hope you treat your wife and kids better." The next day was a hellish one. I spent hours slaving away at my job, came home, and went to bed after lifting some weights. Football, college, and work were already weights on my chest, but there was a new weight. All day at work I thought about the house and the opportunity that came with it. The chance to find a girl I loved and settle down, maybe even start a family. Over the weekend, I woke up early to find my unlit bedroom bathed in shade. I was about to lay my head down when I felt a squirming in my guts, like a worm writhing through my body. Without control, I stood up and started to walk. A thought wormed its way into my head. The tape. Birth. It festered there for a moment, and by the time I'd reached the kitchen, I decided to go into the basement and find the box. I swallowed a mug of cold coffee and chomped up a small stack of pancakes without syrup or butter. I didn't cut the cakes either. I just took a fork, stabbed a chunk off, and then scoffed it down. I then rushed into the basement, engulfed by darkness. I tried the light switch, but it wouldn't flick on. So it's a piece of shit type of old house, I muttered to myself. Well, I ran up the steps like I would down the football field, tore open a drawer, and ripped out a flashlight, slamming the drawer shut. I charged back down, and shone the beam of light into the cool, murky basement. There was a tiny leak in the corner, droplets of water spilling out into a bucket with a steady drip, minutes away from overflowing. I might want to save up for some inspections and repairs, I thought. Cobwebs were sprawled about on the ceiling, a few spiders crawling around through the silky mess. I cringed when I saw them. Ever since I'd been bitten by a spider as a kid, I'd stomped on anything you might call a creepy crawly. I rummaged through the cardboard boxes and plastic totes, waiting for the VHS tape to reveal itself. I found a dusty, scarlet-red blanket in a pile of pillows and stuffed animals. My mum had made it for me when I was 4. Hidden underneath a pile of various sports relics and kids' toys in another box, I found the first football my father had ever gotten me when I was in kindergarten, still playing catch with him out on the front lawn. I also found a mangled action figure, one I must have played with all the time. He had a black cape, wearing a grey suit with eyes that I crossed out with pen or paint. I laughed to myself and put the figure back in the box. Then I came across the box I was looking for. Inside, wedged under a few old picture books, was the tape. It stared at me without eyes. It conjured up images inside my head of hungry wolves and snakes flickering their tongues. I lifted it up and studied it, brushing off another spot of dust, checking the label again. I was surprised to find an old VHS player in the next box that I searched in. And as soon as I did, my chest ached. I stared at the tape, and then the player. There was a scream in the back of my mind, a booming voice, like God himself was crying out to me, "Shatter the tape, and then bury the remains 12 feet deep." I dwelled on it a few seconds longer, thinking of the time when I was a boy and my friend Cameron and I were going to walk down the railroad tracks. I'd warned him that the train might hit us. He just punched me in the shoulder and said, "What are the odds of that, Statman?" So I took the tape and the player upstairs and set everything up. I took a deep breath, stared at the VHS as I held it, and then pushed it into the flap. It pulled the tape in like an invisible hand was on the other side, snatching it up to eat it. I listened to the electronic shuffling as the player worked itself back to life. My palms were sweaty, and I wiped them against my shorts, tapping my foot against the carpeted floor. It sputtered, and I expected the tape to fly out in a cloud of dust and the VCR itself to set on fire. I took a few steps back from the TV. A few of my hairs stood on end, and I whispered aloud, "What are the odds, Statman?" The TV came to life. Static covered the screen. I hit a few buttons on the remote controller, and the screen went back to darkness. I tapped my foot again. Nothing happened for a few seconds, but it felt like minutes. White letters flashed across the black. A date. I skimmed it over, looked at my reflection in the darker parts of the screen. My eyes were wide, like a cat's in the night. A circle of candles lit themselves, my reflection in the middle. I gazed at the TV, my eyes adjusting to the darkness on the screen. The silence continued. The camera went in and out of focus, the images of the flames blurring for moments at a time. I almost fell backwards when the camera came into perfect focus. The candles were arranged in a pattern in the dark room. A pentagram. The orange glow provided enough light to reveal the forth above the circle and the sound of a groaning wooden beam. "Jesus Christ," I uttered. Men concealed in maroon robes and cloaks circled the pentagram like sharks. The room got brighter, and the camera picked up more grainy images. There were 5 chairs placed around the room, and each chair held up a pair of feet. Shaky breathing could be heard now. Each cultist started towards one of the chairs and placed their hands on it. With a gasp of wind, the flames of the candles waved. The cultists all yanked the chairs at the same time. 5 necks snapped with the crunch of a popcorn kernel between your teeth. I winced as I heard a gasp of breath released by the survivor. With a sharp tug, one of the cultists silenced them. The cultists then gathered inside the circle, each one holding a different item. One was a plant with black flowers. Another cultist, one with a mortar and pestle, ground the plant up and scattered it across the circle. Another held a goat. It bleated, struggling in the grip of its captor. With the other hand, they brandished a rusty knife, which they slid up the goat's stomach. The goat bleated louder as blood covered its body. The blade reached through the goat's neck, the point jabbing out of its throat. It collapsed and then stopped crying. The body was dropped into the middle of the circle with a thud. The veins in my wrists felt like they might explode. What are the odds, Statman? The worshippers hummed, and one waved a cross in the air. They held it upside down, a leather-covered book in the other hand. They were reading a passage from it. I felt my stomach churning, the taste of not quite digested coffee and pancakes in the back of my throat. Steam began to rise up from the pentagram in a thick cloud, followed by the humming and chanting growing louder. My vision grew hazy, silver flecks of light floating in front of my eyes. In my head I saw the tape's label, the name written in shitty handwriting from a red pen. Birth. I spun over. A cloud of vomit projected out from between my lips, carpeting the floor. I panted, held onto my couch, and dragged myself forward like I'd been shot. My leg skimmed the puke, hot acid coating my knee and shin. I lay down on the sofa, waiting for my strength to return. My vision got blurry again, but then returned back, and it came back twice as strong. My eyes were sucked towards the TV. A geyser of blood exploded from the pentagram. The steam shot up in blasts of misty air, blocking out my vision of the ritual. Stripes of static and electricity crackled across the camera's feed. For a second, the tape displayed nothing but what looked like a broken phone screen. Distorted, gravelly laughter echoed from the VCR. Another bout of laughter came. This time I heard it ringing out from around the house. I heard it in the very back of my mind, ebbing through my brain, clogging my synapses. The steady chuckle transitioned over time into the cry of a baby. My breaths came easy now. From the blood came a torso, a head, arms, and legs. A baby of boiling blood hovered in the middle of the circle. The tension in my chest had disappeared. I watched the baby materialize like I would have watched the morning news. I looked into the corner of the screen and read the date on the tape. November 17th, 1999. 11/17/99. Now the tension in my chest came back in a tsunami wave. That's my birthday. I scrambled to grab the remote, flicking the TV off in an instant. My breaths came in shallow gasps, and a new feeling was born inside me. It was the sense that I was being torn apart from every direction. Bloody hands and fingers plagued with boils and arthritis reaching out and yanking at a part of me. I threw up again, vomiting chunks of digested food and sour, bitter acid all over the floor. My skin pulsed, as if it were having muscle spasms. I rolled around the living room floor and screamed. I suppressed the salty tears as pressure built up behind my eyes. I slammed my fists against the floor like a monkey trying to escape its cage. There was a man in the room now. I couldn't see him, but I felt him. I heard his laughter, distorted and gravelly, like the horrific shit that grumbled out of the TV. It's been a few days. I keep having visions. Not dreams, but memories. They always come whenever I'm waking up in the morning, speaking to someone at work or trying to fall asleep. I have visions of the unskilled blowy I got in 8th grade, and I see the faces of every girl I've ever played around with. I see my friends and I rolling joints while the music screams in our ears and purple lights half blind us, or waking up in front yards of houses we don't even remember going to. Sometimes I see my grandfather. He died when I was 5, but we visited him often because his wife was found bloodied in a bathtub when I was 2. Well, him and stomach cancer had traded blows for years. He liked to talk football with me, and we went fishing a lot too. I stood at his side while the life flowed out of him, and with a dusty, winded whisper, he told me, "The devil lives inside all of us." And a few days later the police closed the case on my grandmother's murder. A bloody knife had been found in a box in my grandfather's basement. I was getting into the shower the day after I watched the tape, and froze when I looked into the mirror. A ripple tore through me. I grabbed my side and supported myself on the bathroom counter. My head throbbed with a stinging pain. I put a hand over my hair and felt something stabbing into the palm of my hand, so I pulled away. When I looked back into the mirror, a white knob of a horn had started to protrude out of my flesh. I stared at it, tapping it with my fingers. I looked into my own eyes. They were fiery orange, flickers of yellow and red behind the flames. I smiled to myself. My teeth were razor blades. I'm sitting on my living room couch right now, writing this. A loaded revolver sits to my left. I understand myself now. If I had control over my thoughts and actions, I would have reached for that gun, cocked the hammer back, and repainted the walls in an instant. Every few minutes I pause and check the chamber of the gun, and I see that there's still 6 bullets in there instead of 5. I place my thumb on the hammer. After putting the gun down, I continue to write this. At the beginning of my suicide note, I thought I was writing this because I didn't have the strength to go through with it, or the devil wouldn't let me. It's clear now. This wasn't meant to be my suicide note, whether I knew that or not. This was meant to be my wanted note, a warrant for my death. I hope I still have the strength to get it outside of this house and into the hands of someone with the guts to pull the trigger. Oh, it is lovely to get around the campfire again, isn't it? We haven't done that for ages. Now, a very, very large number of new subscribers recently. Thank you so much for showing interest in the channel, and I hope I'm going to keep you entertained a lot over the coming years. Well, yes, I do. So, if you're new to the channel, then, yeah, I do this 3-4 times a week, trying to deliver some nice stories for you. Hope you enjoyed those two tonight. Thoughts, feelings, and comments in the comment section below the video, as ever. And of course, I'll be back again very soon. Till the next time, very, very sweet dreams, and bye-bye. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this story today. It really means a lot to me and to the author of the story, of course. Well, if you want to know more about me, I'm pretty much everywhere on social media. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can download my music on SoundCloud. I've got a Patreon if you feel like. Throw me $1 or $2. Very much appreciated. And of course, on Reddit, I have a place where you can leave stories if you want me to read one that you've written. Well, hoping to see you all again very soon. Till then, sweet dreams, and bye-bye.